guys, welcome to the Shenanigans with Shreya. I'm coming to you from the podcast studio today in the Christmas spirit. The festive season is upon us. You know, I'm in my candy cane earrings, my Christmas sweater. It's great. I saw this post recently, which was like, December feels like one long Friday. And honestly, I resonate with that because there's just something about December that just makes you feel fuzzy, warm. The Christmas markets are out. It's just nice that it's Christmas, you know? It helps deal with the dark winter days. So I wanted to talk about the internet, specifically how the internet works, how Wi-Fi connects to our devices. I was just genuinely curious. Like, it occurred to me one day, I was like, I probably have looked this up when I was young. I just can't remember properly. So I wanted to talk about the deep sea cables that are carrying light pulses to the radio waves that are connecting our phones, our devices, and essentially just breaking down the complex systems that make our digital world run the way that it does. But first of all, it's time for our neuroscience fact of the day. So our fact of the day today comes from new research from the University of Plymouth using advanced neurotechnology. Scientists, for the first time, have shown that they can non-invasively alter reward learning in humans using a technique called transcranial ultrasound stimulation, or TUS, basically. So reward learning is essentially the process of learning new information, modifying your behaviors based on the rewards that you're getting. So in the brain, in the human brain, this process of reward learning is essentially regulated by a lot of different areas within the brain, but the main one being the nucleus accumbens. So examples of reward-based learning would be using stickers to motivate children to do better in tests, having free time, being able to have a fun game played in class, or having homework passes. And you get little prizes when you go to the doctors or you go get a haircut. Sometimes they give you like lollipops at the end. And professionally, outside of school, that might be when you receive like promotions, you receive incentives for completing a task. Reward learning is having a positive response to what you're learning, essentially. So transcranial ultrasound stimulation has recently come to the forefront of neuroscience because it's non-invasive. And that already in itself is a big deal because it makes the experience much more comfortable for whoever has to undergo this type of stimulation. It is essentially the use of low energy ultrasound waves to modulate different brain regions so that you can modulate neural activity. But again, transcranial ultrasound stimulation is still very much in the research stage. So we still need to fully understand how to implement it effectively and safely before we can actually start doing this on a wide scale basis. Knowing these things now, scientists at Plymouth University have shown that non-invasively altering reward learning in humans can be done using transcranial ultrasound stimulation. So this is a game changer because they were able to target the nucleus accumbens. This area is basically the center of motivation, reinforcement learning. It's the hub where all of the dopamine signals converge together so that we can make a choice. Until now, to reach the motivation centers, to reach the nucleus accumbens, you'd have to have invasive surgery done, like deep brain stimulation. But what these researchers at Plymouth have shown is that you can apply TUS, which is the transcranial ultrasound stimulation, for just over a minute, and you'd be able to influence how people learned the links between certain cues and rewards. So participants were more likely to repeat a choice that had previously paid off, meaning that their learning rates following positive outcomes increased. So this technique essentially shows that there's immense promise as a non-invasive, safer alternative for treating neurological or psychiatric disorders like addiction and depression and eating disorders by helping to reshape certain reward circuits. Your cue, for example, what is stimulating your response to certain things, and your reward, it's a circuit, it's a vicious cycle. So this cue might be hanging out with a certain group of friends, and then the reward might be taking a drug. And because it's this intensely vicious cycle that's going to go on loop, the transcranial ultrasound stimulation might help to non-invasively alter that circuit. So it is a huge step forward to help people overcome things like addiction, proving that we can indeed influence deep brain behavior without the need for like actual surgery or implants or incisions. It might be introduced to the wider range of treatments soon. But yeah, coming on to our main topic today, which is about the internet. So when you type a website address, you are basically setting off a series of chain reactions across the world, which I still think, like infrastructure-wise, so crazy that humans have been able to develop this intense network from device to device, it's just us being able to connect to different servers across the globe in such a short amount of time, which is crazy. This is truly, I feel, really magical, especially if we were to talk to someone even from 50 years ago, 60 years ago about, hey, I can just access things from across the world. I can have answers at the tip of my fingertips just so quickly. So just a few definitions, a few key players in the picture of the internet. When we think about our devices, so whether it's the phone that you're listening to this podcast episode maybe, or your laptop or your tablet, whatever device that you're connecting the internet to is called the client. So we are the clients essentially. Now, the website that you want to look up, it could be YouTube, it could be Netflix, whatever it is, all of these websites have their data on a server. So servers are just these massively heavy, powerful computers that are often stored specifically in this facility called a data center. And the thing about these servers are that they need to have so many backups in case there's an internet connection issue. There has to be a server on a different type of internet. There have to be backups for every situation. So there's so many contingency plans in place so that the website doesn't fail. So for example, when you want to visit YouTube, you're connecting to the YouTube server, but you're not really connecting to the name per se. It's more so the IP address. The IP address, which is basically the internet protocol address, is a unique numerical address that's given to every single device and every single server that's connected to a wider network. So it's like when you have to send a letter and put it to the post, this is basically the equivalent that you need an address to actually send your request. So in this case, your request to access a server, you need to know what your device's IP address is so that the IP address can be used to access the server's IP address. As humans, we can't really remember the IP addresses of every single server in the world because these IP addresses tend to look like 192.168.01. That's why for humans, we have something called the domain name system, which is basically the easier version. Instead of having the literal IP address in the number form, we use the domain name system. So it would be youtube.com, facebook.com, Netflix.com, whatever it is. My phone, my laptop, they have their own IP addresses. And now we know the IP addresses of the server that we want to go to. So how does this data travel in the first place? Number one is that you need an internet service provider. So this is where companies come in that actually provide network to you so that you're able to access a global network. And your internet service provider, whichever company that may be, is essentially responsible for making sure that all your devices connect to the correct servers. So this entire process is called routing, and which is why we have a router or router in the first place. It makes sure that, for example, if I'm connecting to YouTube from my phone and Netflix from my laptop, those requests don't intertwine. So our router makes sure that the correct signals from each device stay intact and that they don't switch over to the wrong, device or wrong IP address, essentially. Now, the vast majority of all the global data in the world travels through fiber optic cables. So I remember when I first learned about these, it actually blew my mind because I was like, no way they've actually put all of these cables underground on the ocean floor just so that we can transmit information from continent to continent, country to country. It seemed like such an impossibly big task to do, and it probably was at the time and still is. But that's true. Like they have literally put cables, fiber optic cables, across the land, across ocean floors that transmit information through pulses of light. So these physical fiber optic cables make the entire backbone of what we know as the internet. The information that you request, so for example, it could be, let's watch a video on YouTube. The client is requesting a video. This information is going to be broken down into small little chunks, which are easier to transmit, called data packets. So each packet will contain a little piece of the information, the content, plus, the necessary routing information like your device's IP address to find its final destination. The important thing to note here is YouTube and Google and so many of the major companies, their main headquarters would be located in the US, in Canada. But say you're in Europe trying to access YouTube server, the packets that you request from YouTube aren't going to be traveling all the way to the main YouTube server in the US because that just would not be energy efficient or even just time efficient. So loads of big companies, including YouTube, have multiple data centers across the world so that your internet service provider will basically reroute you to your closest server. Like, I actually just looked this up out of curiosity. So if I'm in Ireland, my closest data center is in Dublin. But now that I'm in the UK, it's in Waltham. So you will be rerouted to your closest data center to access that certain piece of information, even just to reduce the lag that might take for all that information to go over to the server and for the server to actually send back the relevant information. So in this case, to show you a YouTube video, it makes so much more sense that you would be rerouted to your closest data center. Now, the fiber optic cables handle the global journey, the journey of reaching across data centers, trying to transmit information. But how does that signal come from these underground cables to our devices, so our laptops, our phones, without a wire? So this is where the concept of Wi-Fi comes in. So Wi-Fi literally means wireless fidelity. It's essentially a system that allows devices to exchange data using radio frequency waves, which again, physics. I just find the whole idea of having different wavelengths so interesting because we can only see the light spectrum. There's so many more wavelengths with microwaves and x-rays and things like that. So many uses for wavelengths. So the Wi-Fi exchanges data using radio frequency signals or radio waves. So when a signal is coming into your house via cable or the fiber, which is the physical component of this journey, we have a router, which you've all probably seen, in your house, you have that box, which is the source of the internet for the home. This is the device that converts these digital signals into analog radio waves, and then it starts broadcasting these radio waves across certain frequencies. So usually it's around 2.4 gigahertz to 5 gigahertz. And then all our devices have this inbuilt Wi-Fi adapter that is constantly looking around for these signals. They're literally built to pick up on these sort of signals. So when you connect to the Wi-Fi, your device and the router, they start talking to each other in accordance to something called the IEEE 802.11 standards, which is basically like a set of specifications, a set of rules for the wireless local area networks of how the Wi-Fi is going to work within a certain device. So when we're making the request to watch a YouTube video, what happens is that our router takes this information in the form of the data packets that we talked about earlier, converts the radio waves that it has received into digital signals, and then sends them out to the internet through the cable connection, through this infrastructure that we spoke about, this massive global infrastructure. And then once all this information has gone to the YouTube server and the YouTube server has sent the video back through, again, data packets, it's going to come through from the internet, and then our router is going to reverse this process and turn the digital packets back into radio waves for our devices to pick up. I just think it's so cool how seamlessly this process happens, and it's basically just light pulsing across fiber optic cables, converting them to radio waves, traveling through the air again and again, back and forth to every little thing that you've looked up ever in a matter of milliseconds, which is just so cool that technology has come to this. So yeah, next time you look something up, you're gonna hopefully think about this little intricate dance of clients and servers and light pulses and deep sea cables and all these invisible radio waves working in harmony. I think also in a way, I did want to talk a little bit about this because data centers have always been present. Every single company, they would have data centers, and these data centers, it is true, they need to have cooling down systems. They need to use water and electricity to make sure that they don't overheat and that the servers stay up and running. And this has always been the case. And only recently, with the emergence of AI, have people really started thinking about it. I think we're only paying more attention now because of the emergence of AI, and we have started to be more concerned and proactive about our approach. It is true that Gen AI uses it 10 times more than regular servers. And I did come across a UN Environment Programme article about what the world can do about the overuse of resources done by data centers, specifically in the AI context. So the UNEP, which is the United Nations Environmental Programme, recommends 5 main things. So I'm just going to read the article as I have in front of me. So firstly, countries can establish standardized procedures for measuring the environmental impact of AI. Secondly, with support from the United Nations Environmental Programme, governments can develop regulations that require companies to disclose the direct environmental consequence of AI-based products and services. Thirdly, tech companies can make AI algorithms more efficient, reducing their demand for energy while recycling water and reusing components where feasible. Fourthly, countries can encourage companies to green their data centers, including using renewable energy and offsetting their carbon emissions. And finally, countries can weave their AI-related policies into their broader environmental regulations. So yeah, there you have it. It would be nice to see companies go in a more greener direction when it comes to using environmental resources to cool down their servers. When I looked into this, I was like, I'm not even that surprised because of the intensive demand for the internet that there is. It would be so difficult to have this not be as draining on resources that it is at the minute. But I think it is really just making that effort, that extra effort to try from a company perspective, because there's not much that as users we can do apart from using the internet less, which is a bit difficult in this day and age when we're so dependent on it. But yeah, I hope that this was a fun episode to listen to. I did remember and relearn a few new things, which was fun. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.